Governmental is one of the leaders in the automated model building AI space. We believe that they're one of the big disruptive technologies in the market. So let's start off and let's step back and look at the broad market. And I've mentioned this a couple of times in the morning session that 2.5 years ago, the buzzword was big data, and right now it's AI. And there are a lot of pretenders in the market, as I'm sure you feel there are a lot of pretenders in the market. So I'd like to get your perspective of the AI market from a very 50,000-foot level for the audience. What is the landscape, and why is it that Spark, what does Spark do that's different from some of the players in the market right now? Very high level.
Well, I mean, first, AI is a buzzword that sort of does to me what all the little pinpricks did to Gulliver. You see all these stories come out about AI as a buzzword, and those are mainly written by people that don't really understand what AI is. So I think part of this is that if we misinterpret AI and if we cheapen the definition of AI and the implications of AI, then, of course, we can relegate it to the historical dustbin of many buzzwords that we've all been used to and have navigated over the years. But if we understand what the potential of AI is, then it's not a buzzword. It's actually a very significant stage in our collective evolution. Before I start sounding like a false prophet, I just want to specify that this evolution that I'm talking about is a commercial evolution. It's a governmental, societal evolution. There are a lot of questions that are coming up as AI becomes more and more real. One of the big things that's happened is that since the time of the Turing test, this legendary test that Alan Turing proposed, where he said that, the day a computer system will be able to conduct dialogue with a human being, and the human being won't be able to tell whether the dialogue was with a machine, that day artificial general intelligence would have arrived. Human parity intelligence would have arrived. But what we found is that too many of us have been focused on that objective of artificial general intelligence. I know that there is a good possibility one day that will happen, but it doesn't stop us from making very significant progress with leaps and bounds in areas of what's called ASI, or artificial specialized intelligence, where in a narrow domain, we now have the capabilities of deploying artificial intelligence at post-human levels of capacity. For today, if you're starting to think about interesting problems to solve, well, that's an interesting problem to solve. You take existing ASI capabilities and you put them together, and then slowly you ensemble them. You bring many of these together and you start solving larger problems. And a lot of people will tell you, but that approach won't ever really get you to AGI. But the point is that in many areas, it might get you to situations which are indistinguishable from AGI. So where we are now, there are clear paths to a level of functionality and a level of capability that is actually tremendous and immense. And it will undo many of the assumptions we've had, economic assumptions around social contracts that we've had in Western societies in particular. And these are some of the things to start to explore now as we build the technology of the future, as we do things to automate processes, and change is coming, and it's going to be AI-driven change, and it's not going to be insignificant.
Okay. So let's dial back a little bit and talk about the journey of SparkCognition as an entrepreneur and as a business leader. And you talked about the future. We're talking about the present. You have a business to run. You're trying to close contracts, be it Verizon or Duke Energy or BP. And what do you think was and you've made a very good, strong progress over the last 18 to 20 months. What was the thing that you felt was there a changing landscape? Were you at the right place at the right time?
Yeah.
And your hurdle rate to getting these customers was low? And as you go from one vertical to another vertical and try to use your platform approach to go to security or government, it becomes harder? Or I just wanted to get a sense from you. You were in the trenches, yep, closing deals, and you've closed a lot of deals. So your thoughts?
The reality is that, there's always luck involved. I think it was a Bill Gates interview. Somebody asked him, would you rather be the smartest guy in the room or the hardest working guy in the room? And he interrupted the guy and said, I'd just rather be the luckiest guy in the room. So there is a sense of humility that one brings to these things, because you can be great, you can build great things, but there are many others. History books are littered with the names of great inventors who had the right idea, but for some strange twist of fate, didn't see that idea pan out in the way that they'd hoped. So, there is a statistical dice that is being played in the grander universe, and if 6 rolls out for us a couple of times, we should be grateful. And I think
that's a good answer. That's a great answer, actually, and you don't hear that answer from a lot of entrepreneurs. So now. We look at one of the things I wanted to further dig in is, and this is a conversation from the morning session, where you have these 2 approaches that are coming about, and I think we're going to see another company in the go-to-market strategy, and that's Cognitive Scale. But a company like Cognitive Scale, which is going and solving the pain point today, right, in a large organization, be it Verizon, be it JP Morgan, where you're taking a use case where there may be like 5 individuals in a business process, and you can take them out of the equation using cognition. And so that's their go-to-market, versus you have taken a platform approach where you've gone after the energy vertical. You want to take the same platform and go after, let's say, telco or government, right? So I wanted to get your quick thoughts on this go-to-market, noise, right? So is this a noise factor?
No, it's not a noise factor. So at the end of the day, look, you got to be honest about these things. Yeah. And there are these levels of the evolution of a technologist. Early on, you're sort of unsure of yourself, and that comes across. Then you start to become very sure of yourself, and you start to oversell what you can do. And you realize that at that point, you're starting to throw out all the protocols and the specs and the fact that half your stuff is built in functional programming, and functional programming is so clean, there's no side effects, and all of this stuff. And then you come out the other end, and you discover that at the end of the day, nobody cares. What we care about is taking the world forward. So my interest in artificial intelligence, which was, yes, at the age of 4, kindled by my absolutely magical experience with computers, where I thought that this device, which, I'd seen TVs before, and TVs were fixed. Whatever image was going to come down the wire was the image that you would see. But now with this Commodore 64 hooked in, I could, clack away at my little basic program, and I could make this completely fixed experience fungible. The notion of programmability entered my head. It became a passion with me. I published my first AI paper at the age of 15 at an IEEE conference. Much to the chagrin of my parents, I dropped out of school at 8th grade, took my O-levels and A-levels privately, went to college at 15. I just was in a hurry to get to a point where I could do AI. So, after having done all of that, I discovered that this is very profound, but it has to be applied to some real end. When we started SparkCognition, we discovered that one of the big opportunities for us, like energy, for example, energy is 20% of world GDP. Energy is fundamentally inefficient. Energy causes wars. Energy causes death. Energy causes global instability. Energy causes the environment being messed up. There's a lot of things. And so with artificial intelligence, we applied we found a number of use cases working with very large clients. Duke Energy was super helpful. Honeywell was super helpful. NextEra was super helpful. Flowserve was super helpful. These are all our banner clients. We've done years of business with all of them. And we were able to understand what impedes them from being better. And we went and solved those problems. We delivered solutions that extended pump failure forewarning at Flowserve from 4 hours, which was the best they had, to 5 days. And the difference in doing that was that in one case, there wasn't even enough time to go and replace a pump that was failing. So they had to use MTBF, very expensive, inefficient methods to do replacements. And then on the other hand, they had enough forewarning, so they could come in and on a proactive basis replace the part. Invenergy, 1,100 turbines, the largest private wind generator in the US. If you look at Chicago Tribune, you put our name, you put Invenergy, you'll see this glowing article talking about our deployment across a fleet of 1,100 turbines all over the US, saving them dozens of billions of dollars a year.
Right.
So use cases and the specifics of use cases came about with customer engagement. But the belief in the technology is something that I've had since the age of 4. Right. So I suppose it's a combination of those two very, very different things. But sometimes weird combinations work.
That's awesome. So, and I can tell you that I'm not as smart as you are. So, I'll rely on the AI part with you and keep the business part with me. John Allen presented in the morning. He was our keynote speaker, and it was a Verizon event. We had leaders from Verizon sit in the morning, and his presentation was on leadership. Yep. And General John Allen decided to join the board of SparkCognition, and he's the lead executive director of the board. Can you tell me a little bit about your relationship with him, sure, and why is it that he decided to come and work with you
My
guys?
previous company, my chairman of the board was General Ken Minahan, who used to run the NSA under Clinton. I worked for him as CEO. He was my chairman for 7 years. The previous company also had a lot to do with the government business. General Allen was introduced to me by a mutual friend, and very quickly we became very, very close. Separate from business, we just became very, very close. One of the things that I look for, and I had dinner with him last night, I was talking to him about this, is that more and more, being in machine learning, I've started to pick up on features that I use to decide whether or not I'll get along with somebody. And one of them is you read. I find that it's not sort of like a completely binary classifier, but most people that read, they have a lot to say. They have new experiences that they can share. I like that. And General Allen reads a heck of a lot. So
he talked about it at the session.
He does. And General Mattis does as well. Yeah. And those are very endearing things as far as I'm concerned. So we hit it off at a personal level. Then we started talking about, just one day he came over to my house and we spent the entire weekend talking about where we think the world's going. We started with country by country analyzing what he calls the seams and the rifts. And I gave him sort of a data-based view of what I thought was going to happen. We talked about a lot of this, and we came to the conclusion that the world is heading into a state of what we call hyper-war. That doesn't mean that it's going to be a shooting war all the time, just like the Cold War wasn't a shooting war, but it is a nature of conflict. It's an evolution of the nature of conflict. And it's not about guns and weapons and missiles and tanks and aircraft. It is about those things as the ultimate elements that will play this vision out. But it's actually of technology empowering decision-making, of the illusion of some of these kinetic decisions not being paid back. I'll give you a very specific example. People think that you can go attack, you can have a serious cyber attack against an opponent, and they won't really do anything. These kinds of constructs have not occurred in the history of the world ever before. I mean, if an invading army came, let's say, to Imperial India, and walked up and stole the marble around the Taj Mahal while India was still under imperial rule, I don't think people would have just sat around and watched. Right. I think there would have been maybe a little bit of an argument. Yeah. But here we have a $1.2 trillion investment in our F-35 program. And we have a Chinese cyber attack focused on a Starbucks cafe where some Lockheed individuals walk their laptops into the Starbucks cafe. There is a compromised wireless access point which downloads a malware into that laptop. They walk back into the secure air-gapped Lockheed network, and the plans for the F-35 over the next few days and hours are transmitted back to China. And at the Shanghai show 2 or 3 years later, there's an aircraft that looks very much like the F-35, but it's not called the F-35. It's a Chinese aircraft. Right. And so $1.2 trillion worth of American investment, which even if you prorate it, Taj Mahal probably cost less. They would have gone to war over it. Now what do? What was the means of attack? So, I mean, the point is the rules are changing to such a degree that it's our responsibility. We are leaders in applying AI to industrial. We've got 50 to 60 customers, the largest customers in the world, the largest utility in Europe, the number 1, number 2 utilities in the US, the largest manufacturer of pumps, the largest manufacturer of turbines, the largest aviation company in the world. You go down the list. Our client roster is unmatched. But we have a responsibility. And by the way, we are not the AI guys that go to Barnes & Noble, get 2 O'Reilly books, cut and paste 3 algorithms, and then say, oh, look, we're doing AI. We're building new algorithms. We're publishing new work. We're advancing the state of the art of the science. These two things hand in hand, we have a very, very key responsibility. I mean, if some of our allies, the presidents of the states of some of our allies invite us to spend a day with them to walk them through what the hell this AI thing is and what will it do in their world right now in the context of the Yemen war, in the context of the Syrian war. It's our responsibility to do those things. Of course, all the while, the commercial business is booming.
No, that's great. That's good. So I just checked the clock and we're out of time. I think we have 15 minutes. We have.
You got time.
We have time? Okay. And this is a good segue into my next question, and that was that you have the energy vertical, you have the security vertical. You also introduced a new product called Deep Armor, which is an cognitive anti-malware endpoint protection. You're trying to get designed into handsets and all that. So security as such, and Dr. John Allen talked about security themselves, and I think you're 2 of the largest stock exchange are customers of yours for behavioral anomaly detection. You look at the security market, I think one of the things, and we have folks in Israel who are, we have an 8200 expert here who was a security expert for the NSA equivalent of Israel. He's part of the ventures team. And we were talking about it last night about cybersecurity. There's a lot of hype again, right? But you look at the multiples and the exits in the space, it's been very, very challenged, like from an investment perspective. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on just the market as such, like cybersecurity and its application to government versus commercial, right? How do you see the commercial market? Why is it that...
Very good question. That's a very deep question because, the problem with cybersecurity, I might be off by a few points, but not by much. About 25% of enterprise spend is all on cybersecurity. The way that I think about cybersecurity is it's sort of been atomicized into nothingness. In the sense that, I buy, one of these like the cars that you can assemble for your kid. And 3 years ago, it used to be like 6 parts. Okay, fine, I'll put them together. Now it's like 15 parts. You sort of fret over it.
You want Palo Alto, you want Fire, you want all these.
Exactly. And it's just becoming like, at the end of the day, I'm going to kick this out. I don't have time to assemble this damn thing anymore. Somebody can do that for me. So systems thinking in cybersecurity is very important. And systems thinking in cybersecurity, we have actually gone the opposite way. So why? Because there have been so many players and everybody wants to protect
opposite way? Can you just explain that?
What we've done is we've actually fragmented the value proposition, and in order to claim differentiation for the 7,968 cybersecurity companies that exist at any given point in time, we've had to pick these little tiny little slivers, in these curved dimensions of string theory space, which you can't hardly even see. And there they try to say, okay, we're unique here. Now, whether that thing exists or not, you don't know, but they're on that matrix, they seem pretty unique. So the question is that really how a customer buys? So let's take a big customer like the US Navy. What is the US Navy interested in buying? I'll tell you what. The US Navy is interested in ensuring that when the Zumwalt is off on a mission, there is an EW, an electronic warfare attack, there is a cyber attack, that there are cyber sensors that can defend and protect, that there is an ability to identify where the attack is going and all of the systems, which by the way, conventional IT systems. We think of this as, oh, it must be a naval ship, so there's some fancy magical supercomputer from Tron that's running the ship. No, it's actually IBM Blade Center. That's what it is. So it's the same stuff, right? and it's fiber connectivity,
right.
and that's the kind of stuff that we have to make sure that we protect and defend. So
you
solutions thinking,
right?
Solutions
I understood. So now, if you take that and you apply it to the commercial market, what is your view on the commercial market? How do you go about selling to? Now we're going to hear a lot from Shay on JP Morgan and some of his large customers, but how would you go and take this to a bank or to Verizon and say, hey, listen, we can secure your edge, we can secure your bank, we can secure your credentials. How would you go about doing that?
You have to make it a business for a company like Verizon.
Right.
You go to Verizon, of course, there's some table stakes. Your technology works, it's good, it's better than the others.
Right.
But then you have to design a business around that.
Right.
You're not in the business of selling to each and every individual customer.
Right.
You have to architect a business around that joint offering such that your channel, Verizon, is enriched as it delivers this service.
Right. Right.
So that problem is not just a technology problem, it's a business design, channel design problem.
That's a good answer. Yeah.